Your time is the most precious asset that you have. But the way that you're going about managing it may actually be making you squander your most precious resource. When you stop trying to manage your time and instead adopt the 80-20 law as a guiding professional principle, you don't have to manage your time anymore. You will have plenty of it. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through how my calendar transformed and tell you step by step how I made it happen. Let's go. So here's the question. In a world where the rules of business have been written by men, how do women entrepreneurs like us, women who want to make millions of dollars and impact millions of lives, how do we create enormous success on our terms? That's the question, and this show explores the answers. Welcome to Power Presence Position. I'm your host, Eleanor Beaton, and I'm on a mission to double the number of women entrepreneurs who generate over $1 million per year in annual revenue. I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, author, and leadership coach. I'm a wife, mom of 2 boys, and I'm the CEO of a 7-figure business. Stick around because on this show, you'll learn how to think, communicate, and get paid like a 7-figure CEO. Let's go. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Power Presence Position. My name is Eleanor Beaton. I am the founder of Safi Media. We are a business coaching company for women entrepreneurs. We're on a mission to double the number of women entrepreneurs who scale past $1 million in revenue. And it's not just about the money. We truly believe that women entrepreneurs are the key to advancing gender equity globally. And this podcast is all about how you, my dear listener, how you, the incredible woman entrepreneur, can not only grow your business, but can create the business that only you can create, doing it in the way that only you can do it, and ultimately creating a business that generates cash, influence, and autonomy. So this episode is all about CIA, cash, influence, and autonomy, because in this episode, we are talking about calendar control, and specifically how you can really start creating a calendar that reflects your priorities, a calendar that gives you tons of time and white space for creativity, to lead your team, to focus on being the leader that your company needs and the people in your lives need. That's what this episode is all about. So I'm pretty excited about it. Now, if you read my emails, you probably saw that earlier on in February, I did a series of blogs on how my calendar has transformed over the last 3 years. And I included screenshots of my calendar from that week in 2018 and that week in 2021 and kind of broke down the differences. We're going to walk you through that here, but I'm going to be sharing stuff that I didn't actually share in the email series and the blog series. So be sure to listen in. And if you're not on my email list, what are you waiting for? I will regale you every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday with funny, irreverent, highly useful tips that are really here to help you not only be more successful in business, but also really fall in love with yourself and your life while you're doing it. Because who cares if at the end of the day, you create a business that imprisons you? I have done that, by the way. I have totally created a business that has imprisoned me, and that's not going to be happening again anytime soon. So I'm really on a mission and believe that when women entrepreneurs have a lot of autonomy and have a lot of freedom and have a lot of cash, we get out there and start doing amazing world-changing work. So one calendar at a time. All right. So let's talk about calendar control. Let's talk about calendar control and specifically how I transformed my calendar. So here's the thing. I'm actually obsessed with how women entrepreneurs use their time, even though I don't actually believe in time management per se. And I used to really believe in time management, but when I really believed in time management, I had a chock full calendar. And the core difference between myself in earlier iterations of myself when I had a packed calendar and today where I have tons and tons of open time. The big difference is back then I tried to manage my time. Now I am super, super clear on my priorities, and I have very few priorities, and I really throw myself into the few priorities I have, and that's it. So there's a lot that's different between 2018 and 2021, and I thought I would really kind of walk you through. So I want to kick off with this foundational principle, and I've, written about it in my blogs. I've talked about it here on the podcast, and that principle is the 80-20 principle. And in a nutshell, this principle states that roughly 20% of inputs drive 80% of results. And sometimes it's 80-20, sometimes it's like 90-10, sometimes it's like 30-70. So I'll give you an example. The 80-20 principle is also known as the Pareto principle or Pareto's law. And Pareto was an Italian economist, I think from the late 1800s, but do not quote me on that. It could be the 1900s. But what he discovered is that around 20% of Italy's families held 80% of its land. And he kind of noticed that as an interesting data point. And then he uncovered another interesting data point as he was studying the peas that were growing in his garden, as one does. And he uncovered that about 20% of the plants produced 80% of the yield. And in fact, as you start looking at examples from business, from agriculture, from sports teams, all different areas of performance, what you see is the Pareto principle is actually a law of unequal distribution. And by that, I mean that consistently, a few things generate most of the results. So what normally happens in traditional time management, you're trying to make time for everything because what so many of you do is treat everything as equally important. And that's the problem, right? That's what I used to do. And I would say, of course, I don't treat everything as equally important. I just have 10 priorities. And that is the thing that changed. I really only have 3 priorities in my business. That's it. I know the 3 things that I do personally that drive the most value. And I'm also clear on the 3 things that the company does as a whole that drives the most value. And I even know down to the 3 things that individual team members do that drive the most value, right? And everything else, you can basically kind of forget about it. And it sounds terrifying. It sounds cavalier. It's not. I've done this carefully. But really living by the Pareto principle has created tremendous freedom in my life. And, this is the place from which I'm interested in growing. And that place of freedom is really the only place that I'm interested in coaching my clients to grow from. Because I've seen the impact of trying to grow from a place of hustle. I've seen the impact of trying to grow from a place where you have 50 different priorities and you're trying to treat them all equally, give them all equal weight, and push them all up the hill at the same time. I want no part of that, right? I don't think that's good for women. I don't think that's good for society. And I don't think that's a great example for the next generation of leaders that we're all raising. Just to include a little bit of a rant there for you. So let's bring this back to something super practical. So what I did is a little experiment for myself. I compared my calendar for the week of February 8th, so like the second week of February. And in that week, I had 9.6 total hours of scheduled time. And this included like team meetings, et cetera, 9.6 hours. So out of a 40-hour work week, 25% of it, a quarter of it was scheduled. 3/4 of my work week was open. Did that mean that I was napping or just doing whatever the hell I wanted? Well, for some of those hours, hell to the yes, I was doing the things that I wanted to do to live my life the way I want to live. But it also meant that in other hours, I was creating things. I was, thinking about what podcasts I wanted to make. I was thinking about who I wanted to have as guests on podcasts. I was writing emails, creating some curriculum. But the key is that I had a lot of space and freedom. So that's what my calendar looked like. That week, 3/4 of my time was open and unscheduled. And that's pretty much what my calendar is like now. Now, you might not want this amount of open unscheduled time. I remember talking to a client. She's like, but I love working. And I get that. But my thing is, I want you to have the freedom and choice to use your time as you wish versus being trapped by my schedule, which is how I used to feel. So that same week in February 2018, so 3 years earlier, I had 29 hours of officially scheduled time. That meant that 75% of my working time that week was scheduled. I'm talking back-to-back appointments, too little, if any, time to prep for upcoming week meetings, no bio breaks. I barely could eat lunch a lot of days, and very little unscheduled time to create, think, read, etc. The reality is that I wasn't running my business, it was running me. Now, I am super proud of my 2018 self, and I know that she worked really hard to hook up my today self. But that woman was tired, she was overworked, she was overscheduled, and I was doing a number on my health at that time, like really kind of burning out my adrenals. So today, my life looks a lot different. I have a lot of open time. We do not rush. Like, that's one of our golden rules in my company. We just don't rush. And so it's not just my calendar that's more open, the company as a whole, our calendar is more open. So I have become much more discerning about the projects that we take on. You know, I have super strong boundaries. And so my most common answer to bright, shiny objects is no. You know, we don't rush. We're very clear about the few projects we'll take on and the vast majority that we will not. We exercise a ton of discipline. For myself, I really focus on eradicating FOMO, so doing things because I'm afraid of missing out versus doing them because I know that they're the right strategic decision. So let's talk about, what changed. And there's a few key things that changed that I wanted to talk about. And honestly, it really does come down to that 80-20. So a lot of times, and I think one of the things that one of our main filters that we use both, that I use both in my business and my life, and also that I apply when I'm coaching people, and that filter is the 80-20 filter, right? Are you clear? What are the 2 to 3? And usually it's not more than that. Like, if you could only do 2 to 3 things as a leader, what would those 2 to 3 things be? What would be the 2 to 3 things that you couldn't delegate or you wouldn't want to delegate that if I just do these 2 to 3 things, I'm going to continue driving my business forward? And similarly, you can ask that of your company. So for some of you, especially if you're leading, there's the things that you do and then the core initiatives of the company itself. Do you know what those things are, right? And outside of those few inputs, there's tremendous opportunity for people to start getting distracted, for people to start wasting their time on dumb initiatives that don't really add any value, for people to get distracted by the next latest, greatest thing. And that would be okay if it's just experimentation. And I highly encourage people to experiment with things and have fun, right? Like, if we're not having fun at this, why are we doing it? But the problem is that it's actively taking you away from either growing the company or using that time and reinvesting your open time into your own life or into your family's life or into actually managing the money that you're making, right? That's a huge one. So you're making money. Do you have time to make decisions about how you're going to manage it? That has been a huge one, right? Taking more time to think through that. So it's not about being on this treadmill of generating income. It's also like knowing, P.S., that the world's richest people are investors. So they invest in assets. They're not just working, right? So these are the things, this is the awareness that practicing that 80-20 principle really brings, right? So when you are very clear on what are the few inputs that produce the most outputs in your business and in your life, you spend most of your time doing that. So for me, Number one, and they're not necessarily in this order, but number one, thinking and planning. So I spend a lot of time thinking and planning. And then when I have clarity, I go and I do, right? And I try to execute and implement as quickly and efficiently as I can, but really thinking things through. So for instance, that's when I started to see that I needed to take much more time to be mindful and thoughtful about how I was investing money and using money to grow rather than simply growing my business to get it, right? So that's the 80-20 principle. And I honestly think, so planning and thinking is number one. Writing, number two. Speaking, number three. Those three things. That's it. If I only had to do three things in my business, those would be the three things. And those are pretty much the only things that get time in my calendar. And by writing and speaking, those are disproportionately about communicating to influence groups of people, right? So when I'm writing something like our blog posts, for instance, I know that I'm able to connect with and influence groups of people. So I'm not dickering around on email, like one-on-one email necessarily, unless I'm responding to readers of my emails. I'm spending the majority of my time creating written word materials that reach and influence groups of people at once. The same with speaking. It's not one-to-one speaking. I have very few one-to-one clients. I have a few. These are typically women who are running $1 million businesses plus, and I am really coaching them to help them be stronger CEOs, to be stronger leaders, to build their brand, etc. But I just do that with a few people. The majority of my time is not speaking one-to-one, it's speaking to groups of people at a time, right? So I'm very clear. Do you have this level of clarity about what are the key drivers of your success? And then do you get rid of everything else? That's what I think you need to be willing to do in order to free up your time such that the majority of your time is open and unscheduled, and you're not sacrificing income for that. Because that was the other thing. I was like, look, I want a lot of time and money. I don't want to trade in the growth of my business to have more free time. Some people are totally willing to make that trade, and that might be you, and that is 100% okay. But I did not want that. And I also don't think you need to do that if you're smart and are building out assets, right? That's why in all of our coaching programs, Power, Presence, Position in the Incubator, we are obsessed with creating assets. We are the people that you come to build the assets that ensure that you don't just have a successful launch, but you are building important assets that are going to help you grow now and in the future. So here are the things I did. So number one, the difference between overbooked calendar in 2018 and wide open calendar today, and understand that we also are a much bigger company with much greater revenue, profit, all that good stuff, right? So the increase in time also came with an increase in money. And in fact, I can remember when I was a business journalist interviewing this guy, Charles Chang, who started Vega Naturals. I think that's what it's called, Vega Naturals. He sold it for like 350 million cash, 350 million USD cash years ago. And I can remember talking to him, and he was growing his company. And I actually interviewed him multiple times over the years. He was honestly one of my most favorite entrepreneurs to interview. He was just such a great, great guy. And he said, some entrepreneurs have time, some have money. I always wanted to have both. And I remember he said that. I remember the conversation. I was sitting here actually in my same studio that I'm soon going to be moving out of. But I was sitting in my same studio when he told me that, when I was interviewing him. And it was such a powerful moment because it set the course for what was possible. And I realized in that moment, I didn't want just time and I didn't want just money. I definitely wanted both of those things. And so for me, it was about how do I get both of those? So this is what I have done. So number one, between 2018 and 2021, I niched down even more. So in 2018, I was really focused on women's leadership generally, and I was working with women entrepreneurs and also women from corporate. And I loved that work and I loved my corporate women so much. But I knew that, I had to engage in all kinds of marketing theatrics and acrobatics to get it to work. So I decided I was going to niche down. So that 2018 was the year that I released my corporate women, and it was a complete game changer in my company. Like, I actually think, it was one of the most important strategic decisions that I made to do niche down in that way. And I didn't do it lightly. I went through a really rigorous process, the same process that I teach in Power Presence Position, to really help my clients niche down. So that is the same process that I want. So I niched down even more and decided that I was going to focus exclusively on women entrepreneurs. And I was going to use the tools of messaging, of positioning, and of leadership to help them go from overworked consultants and service providers to CEOs with CIA, cash, influence, and autonomy. That's what we do. And what we specialize in is really helping those entrepreneurs build the assets that they need, the marketing assets, the sales assets, the offering assets, the systems, processes, so that their businesses scale with their assets and systems rather than through their hustle. That's what all of our programs teach them to do. And I learned that myself. I went through that process. So I niched down even more. Number 2, I built a PAM business. So PAM stands for Premium Price Ascension Model. Again, that's what we do teach that in the Power Presence Position program. But what this means is that you create in your company 2 or maximum 3 premium price offers. You spend 80% of your marketing efforts on one of those offers. And then, people go through that offer, they have a great experience, and many of them are going to come into your next offer. So it's just really clear. You have a plan, you're clear on what the transformation is that you provide. You have a plan for your customers, and you're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off, marketing 50,000 different offers. You're just offering a few. Now, again, I know I am just so respectful of the fact that every woman's business is different. So, I have a client right now, a private client who, in her case, it actually makes sense for her to have a number of different offers at the lower level. So I just want you to know, if you're listening to this podcast, we will teach principles and we will lay out methodologies, but they're not used to make people wrong. They are used as a guideline, knowing that there are always outliers who, for them, their business just works differently. And I just want you to know that I detest cookie cutter solutions, and I detest people who try to fit people into cookie cutter molds, right? So you may be that person who's like, well, Eleanor, I've got a lot of different programs or offerings at different price points, and I don't want to cut down any of them to 2 or 3. And I would listen to you. I would consider everything that you're telling me, and I would try to be a great thought partner to you as you sort of navigate your growth. But I think that's important for anyone listening to this. We never want to be dogmatic, right? We want to be respectful, knowing that the ultimate expert in your company is you, but we're here to really lay out, here's our vision of a great way to build a scalable service-based company, and let's see if this is useful for you. Okay? All right, the third thing, OMG, my boundaries. So I have much stronger boundaries. And I thought I had pretty strong boundaries in 2018, and I did. I really did. But I have even stronger boundaries today. It is, in 2018, there was still a part of me who didn't want to be disliked or criticized or let people down. I didn't realize how that part of my personality was going to hold me back from growth and enjoying growth. And I also didn't realize that the answer to growth, because, it's common for entrepreneurs to want to grow more and faster, wasn't in the tactics that I was going to do. It was much more about, can you be that multi-million-dollar female CEO? Can you Be clear enough in your boundaries so that you can love your life, you can provide great customer service, you can show up and serve every day, like just serve your heart out and show up hard every day. And in order to do that, can you set, maintain, and honor boundaries that will protect you so that you can be that woman? I didn't realize in 2018 just how important that was, and I 100% understand that now. And in fact, I'm so passionate about this part of the conversation, communicating expectations and boundaries, because we really don't talk about this enough. And especially because so many of you are providing very sort of transformative and personalized service and transformation. The work that you do to a degree is kind of intimate and connected. And so it can be very hard to create the boundaries that you need to grow, right? And so that was something that I really, really had to do. Back in the day in 2018, I take ownership of all of this, right? Like this was all my decision. So I offered a lot of little mini customizations. And the challenge with that is that it's easy when you're going to lose track of different customizations that you've offered. I thought that I was being generous, but I was really complicating my life by offering all these customizations. And really, I even had core offers and I was still kind of doing little customizations here and there. Sure, we can do this for you. Yes, I can totally adhere to this request for something extra, something over and above, something a little bit different. And the problem is that just adds layers of complexity. And as you start adding layers of complexity, now you have to create layers of complexity in your project management to account for all of them. Things get missed. And then in the effort to please your customers, you're not living up to the myriad promises you made to them, and now you're disappointing them. So, and then if that's happening, you don't want to grow, right? So really getting clear on here's what we're going to do, here's what we're not going to do, and this is the way that it is. And we would love to serve you. And here's what we're going to do. And here's what we're not going to do. And really approaching that conversation from a place of clarity and gratitude. That was a big one. And I think the more I have been able to do that, the stronger customer service has become, and just the less complex and the fewer headaches. So in our company, we talk a lot about boundaries. We talk a lot. Like I am talking with a team member about boundaries almost every week because I really feel that the more clear we can be about it, the clearer we can be with everybody, and the more we can show up just in the fullness of who we are because we're really clear about who we are and what we'll do and who we're not and what we won't do. So I hope that makes sense to you. I'm just so passionate about boundaries and how boundary setting is really the heart of scaling that nobody talks about. So I hope that's useful to you. Okay, thing number 4 that I did. So to close that loop, with respect to boundaries, I have much stronger boundaries. I do a much better job of communicating them clearly now. And that really helped me transform my calendar because I'm not burdened with all this administrative BS, nor do I need to have someone whose full-time job it is to handle administrative BS, right? A big problem that so many of you guys have is you're trying to hire people to handle complexity that you shouldn't have in the first place. I've made that mistake. And, I feel sometimes like I make mistakes and go through things so you don't have to. All right. So that's lesson 3. Thing number 4 that is different is a total transformation. It's subtle. You could probably barely see it on the outside. You wouldn't know what it is. But it is a massive difference in who I am and how I show up. And it's that I believe fully that I'm enough just the way I am. And this is kind of the secret sauce that makes it all work. So a little bit in 2018, I'm a coach. I have been in therapy and really benefited from that. I have been in coaching. I have done my coach certification. I have, worked with amazing coaches, read personal development books. Like I, am really into personal development. and have been for years, by the way. In fact, actually, my commitment to personal development is one of the things that first attracted me to my husband, Leon. We met sitting on a plane. He's 6'7", I'm 6 feet. This was back in the day. We were young. I think I was 21 or 22 when I met him, 22. And so we were sitting in the bulkhead, the place where there's lots of free legroom. Now you have to pay for those seats, but little ones, back in the day, you didn't have to. And so we were both young and didn't have money, and we were seated there because we were both tall. Anyway, he was reading The Road Less Traveled and Beyond. So The Road Less Traveled is like this seminal personal development book. And I had read that and it changed my life. And then I see him reading The Road Less Traveled and Beyond. So plus he was like 6'7", completely gorgeous. And every time I looked over at him, because I was actually at that time a little bit hungover because one of my good girlfriends had come home from a year in New Zealand and we were sort of celebrating with her at the Duke of York pub in Toronto. Anywho, so I, was kind of half asleep, and every time I would wake up and look over at him, he would flash me this amazing smile. And then I realized he was watching The Road Less Traveled and making notes on the book. That was it. I was in love. We've got a 6'7" basketball playing, personal development reading guy. Are you kidding me? He's mine. Anyway, so all this is to say, I'd done a ton in sort of personal development work, and I still would sometimes roll my eyes a little bit when people would talk about worthiness. I was like, yeah, I get it. But the thing is, I actually didn't get it. Joke's on me because I didn't get it. I still had the belief, and I have worked with so many high achievers who have this belief, and a lot of us have had it since we were kids, that we only get the love if we're killing it. And the moment we stop killing it, we don't get the love, right? And so the experience is that we have to kill it if we want to get love. That love is actually very conditional. It's not unconditional. And so you never really feel like you're enough, and you always feel like you have to give it 150%. And this sounds great, and you hear lots of stuff, give it 110% every time, and when I think about my addiction to the men's WNBA, and I look at the players, and there are players there, and they leave it. They give 110% almost every night, night after night. But you know what they don't give? They don't give 110% 24/7. And I think sometimes for many high achievers, we feel that if we're not giving 110% every minute of every day, we're just going to lose the love. It's all just going to kind of go away, that we won't be worth anything. And so I still had that. And what was it creating? It was creating over functioning. It was creating over complicating. It was creating taking on lots of different things because we wanted to give 150%. So that drove a lot of inefficiency, actually, and a lot of unnecessary things. And so one of the coolest things I think about the last 3 years has been that I have taken a lot of time to not only decide what my goals are, but why they are important. And this is what I want to share with you. What is your goal? But also, why is this important to you? And that is such a critical question, because if you feel like you have to do it in order to impress people or in order to be more worthwhile or whatever, if you feel like you need to accomplish it in order to be better, I'm going to invite you to consider the benefits of finding another reason, right? So when I realized and really accepted, girl, you're enough. It doesn't matter how big your business is or how much you do or how excellent you are. It doesn't impact your worth as a human being. It's all good, girl. That sort of real acceptance of worthiness was a powerful reorientation, because then at that point, I stopped sort of overfunctioning. It helped me really edit away and prune away people-pleasing tendencies that I'd grown up with and that I had. And it helped me be much clearer in terms of this is who I am, this is what I offer, that's how it is. Not in a cavalier or disrespectful way, but in a, look, I've put in the work and created this beautiful planet, planet Safi, that I think of my business as a planet. I would love for you to come and chill here. And, this is how it works. So if that works for you, great. If not, no worries. We'll see you later. And that belief of sufficiency, that belief that you are worthy, that you are enough, that any of the goals you accomplish will do nothing to change that underlying worth is very powerful, and it helps to eliminate a lot of the overfunctioning, ridiculous over-delivering, striving, stressing, hurrying, rushing, all of these things that can really impact your business, but they specifically impact your love for your business, right? So that's a huge one. And then I come back to number 5, which is just having really powerful filters. So at this level, guys, so many of you, it's not knowing what to do, it's knowing what not to do, And so are you able to apply those 80-20 filters and just stay really focused on a few things? I have a couple of core projects for the year, and that's it. We do not overfunction. We don't rush. I really take my time to think through what are the most important projects, and I just barely let anything else in, And that might sound really rigid to you, but you know what? In a world that is battling for every scrap of your attention to go sell it to the highest bidder, you do need to have ovaries of steel when it comes to setting boundaries about what's truly important and what's not. When you have the world's richest companies employing the brightest minds in a way to splinter your attention so that they can go and sell it to advertisers, when you are faced, and all of us are faced with this, guys, this is a reality. When you are faced with that kind of onslaught, you better be showing up with clear boundaries and filters about what's important to you and what gets your attention and what does not. So many of us are obsessed with the amount of screen time our kids get and everything else. Well, we need to set the example too and show them what discipline looks like. Show them what vision looks like. Show them an example of a woman who is fiercely committed to her vision, who honors her priorities, and who has created a beautiful business and life based on that commitment. That's the big change, some of the biggest changes that I made. Am I telling you how I filter my email? No, I'm not. I'm not. There's a lot of sort of like little tactical things like that we might get to in another place. But what I'm sharing with you here in this podcast episode are some of the core foundational shifts that I made. Well, listen, my friend, I hope this was really useful for you in terms of rethinking your relationship with your time, rethinking some of the principles that you use to shift your relationship with time and really ensure that the calendar that you have matches the things that are most important to you and that offers you the time and space and freedom to be able to think deeply and strategically, to really be the leader your life, your business, your friends and family need you to be or want you to be. And that as you're building out your business, you're creating not only a business that produces a ton of cash, but also a life that yields a lot of freedom. I hope this was useful to you, and I hope you have an awesome day and rest of the week. Ciao for now. If you love this show, then you will love even more my missives, i.e. my emails. If you're not on my email list yet, I strongly encourage you to sign up at eleanorbeaton.com/join. Now, When you go and sign up for my email list, you will quickly discover why some of the most popular, well-known, and influential voices in the world of women's entrepreneurship quietly, studiously, consistently open every single email I send out, because they want to be inspired, they want to be entertained, and also I think they really want to connect with a woman like myself who's in full command of her voice and is willing to open up and share her thinking, her ideas, and her story. I promise you that on this email list, you are going to be entertained. You are going to hear really valuable tips about stepping into your power as a leader. And you're also going to get fun insight that I do not share anywhere else. Go to eleanorbeaton.com/join. And I promise you it will be the highlight of your inbox.